I would advise you to start your healing journey as soon as possible, because that's going to be your superpower. Just getting in touch with your emotional world is so important. Just understanding your emotional reactions and limiting them for the narcissist, allowing yourself to process your emotions away from the narcissist. That's going to help you be in like a more level-headed state of mind so that you can start seeing through all of the bullshit that's being thrown your way.
Howdy, everyone. It's your host, Polly Siegel. And for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, certified addiction specialist, and master level trained mindfulness practitioner. I own a counseling practice in both Colorado and Illinois, and I specialize in trauma, OCD, and anxiety. If you live in either of those two states, feel free to reach out to me for a consultation and we can begin the therapeutic journey together. Now on to the good shit. Welcome to season 3 of Shit Talkin' Shrinks. Gosh, I'm so excited. I will be featuring experts in the healing space, and we're discussing a variety of mental health topics, the human experience, and society at large, while creating levity along the way. Get ready to laugh, learn a lot, and change your life for good. Hello, everyone. Another fabulous episode of Shit Talking Shrinks and an amazing guest that I've been very excited to connect with for a while now, and the day has come. So I want to introduce everyone to Adriana Bucci. She is a narcissistic abuse recovery coach, really helping people become bulletproof after they've experienced narcissistic abuse. And I think it's a topic that is so relevant and so real for so many people. So thank you for joining.
Hey, Polly, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I don't know, this is a heavy topic. You know, and listen, there's a lot of episodes that have heaviness to it, even though, as the host, I try to bring levity and lightness, but experiencing narcissistic abuse is incredibly life-changing. Like the type of damage and that it causes to your mind, body, and spirit is truly undeniable. But I think one thing that's come up for me, and maybe you can speak to this, is, when we look at the literature for narcissistic personality disorder, it's 1% of the population. Not that many, and you're smiling, so you may feel differently. But I'm just going off of stats here. That's a small population of people, yet you have all these individuals on social media claiming that they dated someone with the personality disorder. So what are your thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. So the 1% statistic is only for diagnosed narcissists. And the reality is that the majority of narcissists do not get diagnosed because they don't think anything is wrong with them. And they don't think that I don't like the way that I am ruining the lives of the people who love me, so I should go see a therapist and see what's wrong with me. Like, they point the finger at everybody else and they literally just don't get diagnosed. So I personally believe that there is a huge portion of narcissists that are unaccounted for in this statistic. And I also did the math just for fun one day. If it truly is 1%, it's still very significant, because I looked up, it just came over me one day to Google, how many people do you meet in an average lifespan in just a regular sized city kind of thing. And the average is 10,000 people. And so that means that you meet 100 narcissists in any given average 80-year lifespan. And so that's a significant amount of people, because the narcissists, if it really only is the 100 narcissists, they're going to introduce themselves much differently than the regular, normal, boring people, right? So, and they're going to do so much damage. So they are really everywhere. And that's really just with entertaining the joke of the idea that it's only 1%. But, it's still significant, even if that is true.
Well, and I think that's a really brilliant point, that if someone inherently believes that they are not to blame and they have no issues, then why would they seek out therapy? So there probably is this underrepresentation because there's no issue. It's not me. It's you are the problem. It's everyone else who's the problem. So that's fascinating. I want to get into really what, when people are using the term, I dated a narcissist, or my girlfriend was a narcissist, my boyfriend's a narcissist. When they're using that term, are they saying that that person exhibits narcissistic traits, or are they saying they have the disorder?
So I would say they're saying they've been abused, like narcissistically abused by this person, right? Because there's a very obvious pattern that narcissists put onto their targets. And so, I don't like using the term narcissistic personality disorder because that's more of like a clinical term, and I'm not a doctor, I'm just a coach. So, it's really like that would be the diagnosis, but again, they're not getting diagnosed, right? So when someone believes that they've been in a relationship with a narcissist, or even have a family member who's a narcissist, what they're saying, I mean, I don't speak for everybody, but what I would be saying and what my clients would be saying is that they've been abused by this person. Like they've been made to feel like nothing by this person because this person has their ego as like their number one and their own agenda. So that's how I see it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really beautiful clarification that it's not really about the diagnosis or the label. It's about the painful experience that one has endured by interacting with someone who exhibits those qualities, and the trauma and the heaviness and the immense anguish that comes along with having to experience that. So I really do appreciate that kind of correction. How would you define someone who shows up in a narcissistic way? What does that look like for anyone who's wondering?
So it really depends on like the context of the relationship. So if it's like a romantic relationship, they probably were very, very nice at the beginning. So it's like the love bombing stage. So they all do the same pattern: love bomb, devalue, discard. So when you first meet a narcissist, they're super charming. They seem like the most amazing person ever, too good to be true. And, they sort of sweep you off of your feet and you're just like impressed with how great this person is. And that's like the biggest red flag that you're dealing with a narcissist. Because normal people, they're not trying to prove anything. They're not trying to go out of their way to impress you or something like that. Whereas a narcissist is, and this is how they gain your trust. And so as soon as they're satisfied that they've gained your trust, that's when the devaluation starts to happen. And so things will start getting contradicted from that love bombing stage, right? It'll be like, you don't have that much in common anymore. They start making these small digs at, your looks or your personality, or, just anything to sort of make you feel bad about yourself. And they really induce these emotions of guilt, shame, and fear within you. And it can, a lot of the times it starts off as confusion. And so anytime that you're feeling confused with another person, that's a really good chance that you're dealing with a manipulator, not that you're misunderstanding things or misconstruing a situation. It's really, the confusion is the biggest red flag. And then there's that discard stage where you're nothing to them. Like they leave you, or like they abandon you, or they like ignore you, or give you the silent treatment for 5 minutes or overnight or whatever. And then the love bombing happens all over again. So, maybe it's the next morning they act as if nothing happened, or, maybe like they give you the silent treatment for 5 minutes and then they buy you flowers, or, sometimes the discard doesn't happen and it just goes between love bomb, devalue the whole time. But the discard can be very subtle. And a lot of people think that the discard is when like they leave you alone completely. They never talk to you again. But that's not usually the case. Sometimes they will, like, it'll be like you're dead to them and they just go off the face of the earth. And that's when they've got like a new target, like a new source of supply that is like fulfilling their need for their ego to feel, stroked or whatever. And like they'll discard you when they've got like a distraction of like another person to target, and then they come back and they just keep repeating it over and over and over again until you start Googling their behavior and get out of it.
Oh my God. When you said another source, it made me think of like a tick.
Yeah, they're parasites.
Wow. I want to take a quick pause to talk about our sponsor, a company called BetterHelp. It's an online therapy platform where all the therapists are licensed and accredited professionals. It's affordable. You pay a low flat fee for therapy with your therapist, and it's convenient. Do it at your own time and at your own pace, and you can communicate with your therapist as much as you want and whenever you feel is needed. And more importantly, it's effective. Thousands of people have benefited from therapy using BetterHelp, and we're really grateful to offer all of our listeners 10% off your first month. So if you're interested in receiving therapy ASAP, click the link in our show notes and you can get started. And you get to save money. So I want to, if it's okay, let's break down each of these cycles. So when it starts off, right, love bombing, this is the best thing. It's whimsical, it's passionate, it's intense, it's so amazing. What does that typically look like? What have you seen in terms of the clients that come your way?
So it depends. I deal with mostly clients who were raised by narcissists. So the love bombing looks a lot different in, a parent adult-child relationship versus a relationship with a significant other. So with a significant other, it would be like when you first meet, it's like magical. You think you're soulmates, like they love you like way too soon, or like they say they love you way too soon. And it's like you've got everything in common, just so many things aligned. They seem way too good to be true. Sometimes they'll want to take you on a trip somewhere very expensive and like luxurious and like the first month of dating, like just crazy stuff like that. But when you're in it, it's like you're hypnotized by it and you're eating it up, you're loving it. And so they literally do this to gain your trust, to hook you in, to secure you as a source of supply. And they're making sure that you are eating it up and that you are starting to trust them and you're falling for the trap. And in like a situation with like a parent that's a narcissist, they don't really have to do that, right? Because you're just there. You're born to them or you're adopted by them, however it is you came to be. Like you're just at the wrong place at the wrong time. You didn't get any choice in the matter. And so a lot of the times with a parent, the love bombing looks like they'll be nice to you for once. They'll recognize a talent of yours that they never recognized before. They'll encourage you for once. They will, actually say nice things to you or, say you're going to be one big happy family, make promises to like take care of the grandkids or, they're going to help you with a down payment on a house or whatever. And then of course, like the cycle continues. So it's like, as soon as they've gained the trust, like that's really the pattern. It's really the love bombing is to gain your trust. So whatever they need to do or say to you to gain your trust and make sure that you're bought in to this mirage that they're presenting you, that's what they need from you. And then once they've got that from you, that's when what looks like the abuse starts. But really the love bombing was abuse to begin with because it was all lies.
Right. And it was a very hidden agenda. It's not this authentic connection and authentic compassion or love. It's, okay, I need to secure this trust so that then I can enter the next phase to do what I do.
Exactly.
So in a family dynamic, because I'm glad that we're not only just focusing on romantic partnership, because there are a lot of children who have experienced narcissistic abuse. It sounds like, and this might be relatable to a lot of people, but they give little nuggets of encouragement or nuggets of validation or nuggets of warmth or compassion, and that really kind of fuels the person receiving it, but then it's quickly withdrawn and going back to abusive nature. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, pretty much.
And then after the love bombing phase, we enter into phase 2. Walk us through that.
Yeah, so that's the devaluation phase. So that's when things start to go downhill, really. So, it's when you start second guessing yourself. It's when you start feeling extremely confused. You're walking on eggshells and, maybe they're insulting you. Maybe they're putting you down. Maybe they're like undermining your intelligence or, gaslighting you and making you believe things that are not true. Making you second guess your memory, making you second guess your reality, all that kind of stuff. So it really depends on like the specifics of the situation, what that devalue is going to look like. But in a nutshell, it's really like, those snide remarks, just making you feel bad about yourself, inducing the emotions of guilt, shame, fear, obligation, confusion, general bamboozlement within you.
Mm-hmm. So it could be making, demeaning comments about your appearance or your personality or your behavior or how you conduct yourself in the world.
Totally.
Yeah. Now, here's what's interesting to me. Now, I fully admit I have never been in a relationship with a narcissist.
Amazing.
I'm very grateful. And I don't say that as like a badge of honor. I'm just saying very vulnerably, like I've never experienced it firsthand. So that's where your firsthand experience is so valuable to the conversation.
I love that you're even doing this topic, like, just bringing the awareness to it. So it's awesome to see people who haven't been through it, like giving that sort of support, because so many people go through it. So that's awesome.
Oh my God. It's the most valuable topic. Like when I really mean I was counting down the seconds to chat with you, I meant that. So without having that firsthand experience, it's very hard for my brain to understand that once you get to phase 2 of getting devalued, that for me, that would be a moment of, what the fuck? I'm getting out of here. And I don't say that with judgment for others that feel they can't. I really don't say it with criticism, but I'm wanting to understand the emotionally and psychologically what's happening. Why aren't people dipping at that phase?
Totally. So that's a very great question. And yeah, like people don't run away as soon as the first devalue happens, because it'll start off very subtly at first. And this is how that cycle really works, because they need to incorporate that love bombing in order to hook you in and get you emotionally invested. And when you're emotionally invested, it's a lot more difficult to, like it'll be like something really small that they insult you on or make into a big deal or pick a fight over. And it'll be like one of those things where it's like, okay, that's not a big deal. I'm not going to make this into a big thing. We've got like such a great relationship. I'm not going to throw it away over, this person doesn't like the color of the pants that I wore or whatever. Like it'll be something like so insignificant and random that is like such a non-issue that they're making a big deal over. And like, you just don't want to deal with it anymore. So like, you just sort of ignore it and keep hoping for that love bombing to happen again. And a lot of the times, like narcissists will target people who were raised by narcissists as well. So it's like a dynamic that's very normalized for a lot of people as well, because there's so many narcissists out there. There's no test for having children. Any narcissist can bring a child into this world and like really condition them from such a young age to accept that this is just how people are. And this is normal behavior. And so a lot of the times it's like adult children of narcissists who are getting targeted by narcissists in relationships, friendships, workplaces, even because they're vulnerable. They don't know any different.
And this might be a very nuanced question and hard to answer, but how does a narcissist detect quickly that person might be susceptible or vulnerable? How do they pick their targets?
Yeah, so they pick people with empathy, which is most people, right? And they can tell if you're like kind of like insecure or you're a trauma survivor, or you've got like some kind of vulnerability, like if you kind of wear your heart on your sleeve, or you just, it's the way that you respond to the love bombing kind of thing. So someone who hasn't necessarily been through that sort of trauma would recognize love bombing and think like, oh, wow, this person's so full of shit. Like, and they just don't really latch on to it. Whereas someone who's like a good target for a narcissist, like they're already, generally speaking, like in a vulnerable situation. They do also target people from like really happy families as well, because they've been taught to just see the best in everybody. And so it's just really like, it just really depends on the person who is being targeted. But they really like, that's why they use the love bombing to sort of test people. And so the people who like kind of see through them at first, like they're not going to continue, they're going to leave them alone, and they're going to continue things going on with someone who's like really latching on during that love bombing and like really, feeling supported by this person, or feeling like, oh, finally I found this amazing person in my life. This is amazing. Like, I'm so happy I found them, all that kind of stuff. Like they that's basically it.
Well, I think you answered it so clearly that they'll quickly detect whether the love bombing is received well or whether someone's skeptical. And the skeptical people, like for instance, I'll use myself. If someone came at me really hard with the I love yous and gifts, I'd be like, whoa, motherfucker, like back off.
Exactly.
Right. And I don't say that playfully. I mean, it's just reality. Like they seem to be very perceptive of who they can convince and who might call them out.
Exactly. 100%.
Wow. Okay. So we've got the devaluation and then we enter into phase 3. Take it away.
Well, so phase 3 is the discard, and it's not necessarily always obvious when it happens because sometimes it can be very subtle. But an obvious form of discard would be like they dump you, right? Like after being super mean to you, they break up with you out of nowhere and they seem to just go completely radio silent. And if that happens, that generally means that they have found another source of supply because they're always looking for sources of supply. It doesn't necessarily mean they're always cheating, but they've got other sources of supply as well. This is why they love staying friends with their exes and all that kind of stuff, because they've got someone on speed dial at all times. Like they basically need to occupy their time, like wasting another person's time. Like that's how they function pretty much. So, if they have all of a sudden like broken up with you, they're not attracted to you anymore, they don't see it going anywhere, or they all of a sudden want a divorce, it really means that they have a new source of supply. But a lot of the times it's not that cut and dry, right? Like the discard stage. So that would be like a very obvious discard. And then, they'll hoover, which is like sucking you back in like a vacuum. That's why it's called hoovering. And it's usually done with a love bomb. But, in a situation where it's like a friend or a family member or something like that, it's like they won't, sometimes like a narcissistic parent will threaten to disown you. And then they'll give you the silent treatment for like a couple of days or something like that. And then that's like the discard stage, like, because it always happens after the devalue. And then they need something the next day. They just pretend that nothing happened. They love bomb you again. They pretend everything is normal. So it just really depends. And sometimes love bomb, devalue, discard can happen within one conversation. Like they might say like, oh, you're a great person, but this and this and that about you. And this is why I can't talk to you anymore. So it's literally love bomb, devalue, discard. And that's done to get that emotional reaction from you. So as long as you're emotionally reacting, that whole cycle is going to continue over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. So it really sounds like the discard can either be very overt and dramatic, such as actually ending the relationship, or it can just be stonewalling or the silent treatment where you just completely withdraw your love, affection, attention, and kind of make the other person squirm.
Yes, exactly.
Because what would you say the typical reaction of the person receiving this type of abuse? What are they experiencing during the discard phase?
Oh, they're bamboozled. Like they're questioning like what they did wrong. What did they do to deserve this? Like, how could they have changed things? How could they have made things differently? And a lot of the times, like narcissists will discard for the purpose of getting their target to like reach out to them and say like, hey, like, can we talk about this or whatever? And so you're really in that like fixer mode or like just in a state of shock as well, just like super emotional. And people who are in those emotional states are easier to control as well. So they do use that discard as leverage to get more supply from their targets.
Mm. And when you say supply, what are they getting? Is it, define that for me.
Yeah. So supply is the target's emotional reaction, engaging in conversations with them, attention, time, resources, any, energetic output that you focus towards the narcissist is supply. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but that's what they want. And it's insane. Like it doesn't make sense when you are wired like a normal person with empathy that you couldn't imagine that like this is how you would get your jollies of like, just needing somebody's attention, needing them to, praise you, recognize you, argue with you, cry over you, get into a bamboozled emotional state over you. And then you feed off of that. Like that's what they're doing. Like they're literally feeding off of your emotional reaction. And, getting that attention from you, whether it's positive or negative. They don't care. Any attention is good attention to them. And as long as you're focusing like your energy as a human, your energy being alive, your faculties onto them, they feel powerful and in control. Like they get a little kick out of it.
My God, it's just like when I'm hearing this, and this is your bread and butter. This is what you do all day, every day. This is not what I do all day, every day. I'm just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. It's really hard to wrap your head around. And this is why people are stuck for such a long time too, because supply makes no sense. And it's like, you start sort of projecting your own empathy onto the narcissist and thinking like, no, like this can't be their motive. Like they're a human, all this kind of stuff. And then that, just that whole inability to understand it, because it just doesn't make sense. It goes beyond all empathy and logic of being a human being, that this is how one would get their jollies. But that's, part of the struggle is accepting that like, that's how this person is.
Right. So I want to leave us some time for tangible tools, because, anyone's listening to this is probably relating, has experienced this firsthand, or at least, one degree of separation, knows someone who has experienced this. I certainly know people that have. If you are in the relationship presently, what do you advise someone to do?
So I would advise you to start your healing journey as soon as possible, because that's going to be your superpower. Just getting in touch with your emotional world is so important. Just understanding your emotional reactions and limiting them for the narcissist, allowing yourself to process your emotions away from the narcissist. That's going to help you be in like a more level-headed state of mind so that you can start seeing through all of the bullshit that's being thrown your way. And, obviously consider leaving if you can, but that's, that can be a process for some people, especially if you share children and all that kind of stuff, or if there's like legal obligations and whatnot. There's a lot of stuff that would have to be sorted out before you can actually finally break free. And so the gray rock method would be a great tool to use if you have to communicate with them. And so this is where you become a gray rock, like just be as boring as possible. You have no personality. You didn't have a good day. You didn't have a bad day. You had an average day. Like, don't give them information. Don't give them any emotion in your responses. Just be like the most boring person ever. And then, of course, they're going to have an issue with like your new attitude change. And like all of a sudden you're acting like this. Yep. Oh, well, right. Like you just have to be super, super boring. And so that's a really great tool if you like still have to, if you are still currently like in a relationship with a narcissist. And then obviously if you're listening to this, you've probably been down a rabbit hole and you've been probably considering like, oh, maybe this person is a narcissist. So like gray rock would really be the best way to deal with them while you're still kind of entangled with them for whatever reason. And also expecting them to retaliate a bit, because when you start gray rocking, you're basically taking away supply and they feel entitled to supply from you. So they're not just going to let that go without putting up a fight. So they might say more things to try to trigger you into that emotional reaction, or, they might make threats that, would make you feel that like you have to stay in this relationship or whatever. So, I mean, obviously if your safety is ever at risk, that's a law enforcement thing and all that kind of stuff. But, they're going to say things to put you in a state of guilt, shame, fear, confusion, sense of obligation, bamboozlement. And so doing the gray rock method and focusing on your emotions is going to really help you to see through the bullshit as it's happening and not entertain them fishing for supply from you and just expecting them to try harder when you take it away, because that's how entitled they feel to getting that reaction from you.
Right. And when you say, really being mindful of your emotions and processing them, that could be with a dear friend that you trust. That could be with a therapist, just not outwardly processing it with the narcissist.
Yeah. Do not process it with a narcissist. You can do it on your own. Like journaling is a really great way to do it. Just, literally pen, paper, 20-minute timer, destroy the paper after, because then they will not find it. And that tells your subconscious mind, like, this no longer serves me kind of thing. that's a really great way to process your emotions. And then of course, working with a trusted therapist or even a coach or, a friend that you trust that is not a narcissist. That's a great way to process those emotions, but you never, ever, ever want to process your emotions in front of the narcissist because they're going to use that as supply. And they're going to invalidate your emotions and tell you that like you're hysterical. You shouldn't be feeling this, or you should be feeling this, or it's me who should be feeling this. And like, they're just going to make it into a whole thing to get supply.
Right. Right. Okay. So that's, a strong, the gray rock method, if you are still in the relationship. And if you have left the relationship and you're now really trying to recalibrate and start life over, what are some tangible tools of where to start?
So that's really like the inner work where that's going to be super helpful for you. So, you've separated from the narcissist, you're no longer in each other's lives. That's when it's so important to really turn the focus onto yourself and your healing journey, because you're vulnerable right after a narcissistic relationship and you are perfect prey for another narcissist to swoop right in with love bombing and hook you in that way. So you really have to take some time for yourself and focus on yourself and your healing journey and just really getting in touch with your emotional world, because emotions are literally everything. Like, they are so important. They're so overlooked in so many ways. And so the more that you're in touch with how you feel, that's like your GPS system. And so you're going to be much better able to sniff out bullshit the next time. And so, it's going to help you heal. It's going to help you move forward in life and not be dwelling on this relationship that you just endured.
Ooh, look at that word, relationship. She didn't say relationship, folks. She said relationship. What does that mean? I mean, I can deduce what it means. Just a shit relationship.
Exactly. Which is what they are with narcissists.
Right. I mean, I guess it's impossible to have anything other than a shit relationship with a narcissist, right? It comes in one form.
Exactly. Unless you want to completely abandon yourself, it's always going to be a relationship.
Right.
And it's not good to abandon yourself. So,
right. No, self-neglect only perpetuates the trauma and the ongoing suffering. Okay. So you leave the relationship, and the first thing is getting really in touch with your emotions and getting really clear, like, what am I experiencing? What emotions are impacting me, whether that's guilt or shame or fear, or what are some other emotions that people tend to feel after they get out?
Rage, like anger, just being angry with themselves for not being able to see the signs. But the thing is, you have to give yourself the benefit of the doubt. You were manipulated, right? This isn't something that just, they started manipulating you. They did start manipulating you at the beginning, but they didn't start with like their worst tactics that would have been obvious that this is abuse from day one. Because if they did, you would have never given them the time of day. So allowing yourself to be angry, at like the time that was lost, everything that you poured into this relationship. Grief would be another one too, just like grieving the loss of the illusion of who this person presented themselves to be initially in that love bombing phase. And just understanding that you loved a fake person and this person was never real. They just had to mirror to you what your ideal person would be so that they would gain your trust. And so just mourning that, letting yourself grieve. You can absolutely grieve people who are still alive. And, just really taking it one day at a time and just meeting yourself exactly where you're at. And however you feel is completely valid, and letting yourself feel it, because the narcissist never let you do that.
Right. I think that's a really beautiful point, that because of all the gaslighting and invalidating and making someone feel that they're crazy, they haven't had the opportunity to experience their emotions and flow through them and heal them.
Exactly.
So let's say you're at a point where you're like, okay, I've identified the emotions, I've worked with a therapist or I've worked with a coach, and I feel like I'm moving through these emotions. What's next in the healing journey?
The healing journey, like, it's sort of like an ongoing thing. It really becomes like a lifestyle change. So, if you've got trauma from narcissistic abuse from childhood, like, it really is like, it's just like a muscle that you have to keep working on throughout your life. Because as long as you're alive, you're experiencing life. Narcissists are everywhere. And so I always encourage people to just continue doing their inner work, even after, they've stopped working with me, for example, and just, being in touch with those emotions at all times. And it gets easier, obviously, once you do it. And that is really going to help be that GPS system for you moving forward, because you're going to be able to make better decisions because you're not making emotional decisions. You're making decisions based on logic, and you're going to be a lot more difficult to manipulate because you've mastered your emotional world. So, like whether that's putting yourself out there, dating again, making new friends, whatever the situation is, you'll be able to go into it with a much clearer head, and you'll be able to spot a narcissist much sooner than you otherwise would have.
Right. Well, and I think what I would add too is that by understanding the narcissistic abuse cycle, you can very quickly determine, we're in phase 1, love bombing. Starting to feel like phase 2 of devaluation. Phase 3, okay, I'm being dismissed, I'm being discarded. Like, I think the beauty about understanding abuse cycles is that it gives you a new lens or a pair of glasses to view people and go, wait a second, this feels familiar. This is shit that I have experienced. That's a red flag. This is my alarm system's going off. I need to make a different decision now, or I need to pull out and get into, self-protective mode because this isn't safe.
Exactly. 100%.
Well, I have learned so much from this episode. No, sometimes I do episodes where I'm fairly familiar with the topic. And so I'm like, okay, this is more for the listener, but you have opened up my eyes. My brain is exploding with information, and I have to imagine that our listeners' brains are also exploding. So thank you so much for your knowledge, your insight, your expertise. All of her information is going to be in the show notes. If you feel like you want to work with a coach who obviously this is her passion and you are really an expert in this area, please reach out. We'll have your Instagram information as well, so people have access. But thank you so much. Last thing I want to say is, if you've related to this, please share it to the world. If you know someone who might be in a narcissistic relationship romantically or experience narcissistic abuse within their family and might benefit from this, go ahead and share it with others. And thank you again for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, we'll catch everyone later.